we'll hope everyone is safe and well in this difficult situation. I think the topic today is going to be very relevant, especially we have two leaders in their industries, and they're going to be talking about how to better prepare, how can leadership be impactful in the business, in everyone's lives, and how can we take advantage or take the last impact out of the situation like this one. So thanks once again for everyone there is dialing in right now. We're about to start in about three minutes. Just some housekeeping items to those joining us. We have the Q&A function. If you have any questions that we're going to take at the end of the session to each of the participants today, be our guest, please do so. We highly encourage questions and try to take the most out of a session like this. So feel free to send us any of your questions. We'll have the team here and myself will be hosting the session today, and we'll give you first a quick introduction on who we are and what we're doing, especially on the financial services side, as well as then go to direct to the discussion between our two guests of the day, Said Amidi and Hannes Cizek. Awesome. We still have the numbers going up here. I think we could start already with the brief introduction from Plug and Play, what we do, where we are in terms of financial services. Plug and Play there's a two-pillar prong approach. First, we're the largest corporate innovation platform in the world, where we helping corporations in terms of end-to-end innovation and bringing the relevant startups and technology solutions for them to scale, accelerate new business development initiatives, and provide the best service and experience to their customers, clients, and corporations that they work with today. As well as we're one of the most active investors, early stage investors out there, deploying about 250 companies every year, from seed stage all the way to Series A, and really helping them scale and grow throughout the markets, throughout the globe. These are the two approaches that we came to Frankfurt in Germany back in 2018. And these were the two main vision and drives for us to come here and helping corporations like Raiffeisen Bank International, Deutsche Bank, and some other very important financial institutions in the European market, and bringing the Silicon Valley closer to them. We launched in 2018 here in Frankfurt. We expanded today to 14 financial institutions, and we're now handling most of the European countries, and we have partners in different stages as well, and helping them in these end-to-end innovation. As you can imagine, the main players in the ecosystem are the corporates and the startups, but we also work very closely to the regulators like the European Central Bank and the German Bundesbank and some others across the region. Work very closely to VCs and the VC network, where we co-invest with them into startups and entrepreneurs, and as well as the government entities and universities, which is also the basic pillars for any type of ecosystem and innovation strategies. With that, without further ado, if you still have any questions about Plug and Play, if you want to get involved, if you're not, please send us a message at frankfurt@pnptc.com, and we'll love to talk to you and see how we can plug you into the ecosystem. With that, we have the two guests today. First off, our CEO and founder, Said Amidi, which is the CEO of Plug and Play, which is the world's largest open innovation platform, bringing together the best startups, corporations, and investors to scale and accelerate their businesses and technologies. He's a serial entrepreneur, seasoned executive, growing successful business and companies across 4 continents. Saeed is also one of the Silicon Valley most successful venture capitalists, investing in over 250 startups every year, with notable exits, which include PayPal, Dropbox, Lending Club, and most recently N26 and Honey, which was in turn acquired by PayPal for $4 billion. Saeed is a global leader and champion of open innovation with a real passion for inspiring and helping entrepreneurs and corporations to bring out about sustainable future. Saeed, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Fernando, it's great to be here from California.
Thank you for waking up so early and making the time for us.
Thank you.
And the other participant, our partner, Hannes Cizek, which is the head of group strategy of Raiffeisen Bank International. Raiffeisen Bank International, for those who do not know or haven't been around too long to see them in action, they're based out of Austria, where it's the leading corporate and investment bank, as well as the Central Eastern Europe markets. They're working in 13 different markets in the region, and is covered by a universal subsidiary bank serving retail and corporate clients. Hannes here is responsible for developing and maintaining Raiffeisen Bank International's group's strategy target picture, as well as strategic M&A projects, and driving several transformation initiatives for the group. Furthermore, Hannes oversees the Elevator Lab, which is what we're currently working very closely with the team here in Frankfurt, which is the biggest corporate fintech partnership program in the CEE, which also falls within his responsibilities. Hannes, thank you so much for taking the time today, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Good afternoon from Vienna. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Saeed, over to you to kick off the discussion. Thank you.
Excellent, Hannes. First, it's great to have you here with us. And, it has been very challenging time, at least in California. We started pretty much, they asked us not to go to the office starting from March this year, about 6 months. Can you tell me how this COVID-19 have affected the bank in Austria and in some of your different markets? Can you guys operate your retail outlets, and can you guys go to the office these days?
Sure. Happy to do. I mean, here in Austria, first of all, we are very close to the European hotspot back then in March, to the northern part of Italy, which was the most severely hit, and also in March, really the hotspot with regard to COVID. So Austria closed quite early the borders, and we were, I think, from Central and North European countries, the first ones in complete lockdown back then in March. I must say, with regard to our bank, we reacted, I think, quite swiftly. We moved everything to the cloud, and we were well prepared with regard to communication and any tool you need for sharing. So this helped us a lot, because basically on Friday the government said from Monday onwards everybody's in home office, and if you have to move a few thousand employees over the weekend in home office, of course a challenge. It worked surprisingly well, I must say. In Eastern Europe, the situation was a little different. They had a few weeks more time, simply because there were not many cases in the beginning, which is for us as a multinational group, of course, the biggest challenge is that national regulations become in a health crisis so important, right? So, I mean, especially in Europe, where we were used to freedom of movement and all borders were after the migration crisis in 2015 quite open again. this was a big change again. And I mean, especially Vienna, most of these countries are within 1 hour driving by car from Vienna. And some of my employees even live cross-border and commute to Vienna cross-border. So this was a big challenge, and every country reacted a little differently. We have a big operation also in Russia, and especially with regard to Russia, the situation was in the beginning very calm, and then turned worse very quickly. They had also very severe measures taken there. So it was a challenge. In some countries, we closed quite some retail outlets, up to 50% in some weeks. And but overall, I think the group, we have almost 50,000 employees. I think we did a good job. We reacted early. It was in this case also important that everybody in the management, in the senior management, took it seriously from the beginning on. Yeah, so.
You know, in California and in US, you know, e-commerce and especially food delivery, grocery delivery, almost doubled in 3 months. So we always say that, you know, of course, everybody was used to delivering some products via e-commerce and Amazon, but suddenly, because people were scared of going to grocery shopping and going to the main street retailers, did you guys, do you participate in e-commerce through your bank? And how was the effect of e-commerce like in Eastern Europe and in Austria?
Very similar, very similar. So if you look on the figures, I think any kind of digital service that you can provide had a very good second quarter, also in most of the European countries. So I think from this perspective, it was very similar. How did we see this also in the bank? I would say primarily 3 things. So first of all, we payment infrastructure and payment flows, of course. I mean, this is luckily nothing that causes additional costs for a bank, because the infrastructures are quite scalable. But we could see that especially in any kind of payment infrastructure we provide to e-commerce or merchants, which are online, that these figures went up a lot in second quarter. Secondly, this is maybe counterintuitive, but also stock trading of private individuals went up a lot. So simply, I mean, it sounds funny, but simply people had more time sitting behind their desk at home and started trading on their own account. So there was a lot of movement in the stock markets on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, a lot of people had more time spending on this. So this we could also see in the trading flows, which is maybe counterintuitive in a crisis. Thirdly, that the usage of mobile and online channel also for our banking services went up a lot, of course, because people were not only not going to the grocery shop, they were also not going to a branch and of a bank branch. And so the same here in our retail outlets, the traffic went a lot down. This is worth mentioning because in Eastern Europe, there is still, I mean, branch transformation is an important topic, but compared to Western Europe, it's quite cash-heavy societies still. So the branch in many Eastern European countries has still a different meaning, so to say, than in the US or in Western Europe. And but still, nevertheless, mobile and online usage of our channels, the figures went up a lot in second quarter. They doubled in some markets even, and we had a lot of customers who used these channels for the first time. So in all these 3 areas, we could see it in the second quarter, and it stayed also in third quarter on a high level, I would say.
Very good. You know, the big question here in California is that companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter have already mentioned that the employees don't need to come to work. They can work from home all the way through middle of 2021.
Mm.
You know, that of course has a big effect on office spaces and office need. Do you feel this first time customers that go digital and do their banking online, do you think they will go back to what they used to do after hopefully we find a vaccine for this disease, or do you think they will remain digital?
I think they will remain digital. I mean, customer journeys in banking, especially in retail banking, I think this is globally a very similar development. Everything that is transaction oriented goes more and more digital, and everything where you need some kind of advice, be it on the wealth management side, or be it around real estate and likes. Still, people look for advice and go to a customer relationship manager. And as you said, so I think somebody who for the first time now maybe is a little bit older, because they I mean younger customers anyway use digital channels for the last 10-15 years a lot already, or exclusively maybe. But especially for these elderly people who now in the crisis started to use these channels, and we have many examples. They were of course, especially with regard to your money, they were cautious before and now got used to it, and I think this will stay. With regard to our employees, we have been in the last 6 months, as the maximum was 50% of our employees were allowed at the same time in the office. We returned a little bit earlier, maybe. Also the tech companies and software companies in Europe, it's the same as you described it here in California. It's the same here. One of my best friends, he works for Google in Switzerland, and he was also complaining that he's not allowed to go back to the office until mid of next year. So I don't know. This is tough, to be honest. Not meeting your colleagues for such a long time, even if you are in a super agile or adaptive setup in software development, whatever your role might be, I think it's tough. And I saw in third quarter that most of our employees were actively asking if they can return to the office at least from time to time. It has a lot to do with your family situation. It has a lot to do with your job. The job you're doing, right? I mean, it's very different if you are a financial analyst or you're coding in a team, and it's very different jobs, of course. But on average, I would say not going to the office at all for such a long time. No, I'm not convinced of this concept, to be honest. Yeah.
Yes, no, I actually personally, I really miss the interaction with people. I miss traveling, you know, like I used to complain about, I used to travel about 10 days per month, but right now I really miss some of that travel. And I know that. How often did you personally try to get to your different markets, Turkey, Russia, Eastern Europe? Were you trying to visit your different subsidiaries regularly?
Yeah. So I was also traveling once a week. I mean, distance in Europe is different than in the US or in Asia. I mean, I can, especially Vienna is in the center of Europe. So for me, it's a 2.5 hours flight to London, to Madrid, to Moscow, and to Istanbul. So I'm in a very comfortable situation. But I was also traveling a lot. So every week, basically. So also my personal life changed a lot. And for me, it's very, very much like you described it. A year ago, I was complaining that I have to get up so early 2 days a week and to catch my flight. And now, of course, it's just the opposite. Yeah.
Very good. And if I can ask you, you are also in charge of the elevator lab. Do you think innovation or digital transformation has speed up? Has it gone faster because of this, COVID-19 challenge? Do you feel like some countries that were a little bit slower in adopting to digital banking suddenly had to adopt? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, to start with your second question, my answer would be a yes. I mean, you had to adopt to it to a certain extent, and this was a big driver for digital transformation in banking in the last month, and so on this side, yes. If we talk about innovation and innovation management, it's twofold, I would say. I mean, my impression is everything that is in a very early stage, where it's still rather conceptually. Although we use nice tools digitally to collaborate in this phase, my impression is still this is not something that can substitute a meeting room. For projects that are a little bit more advanced, so where, let's say, you know where you're going and it's more about the how, then it's easier. So this is my impression. I mean, in our startup partnerships, I mean, Plug and Play is our international scouting partner for our fintech program in Eastern Europe. I think also here this is a very good fit, your global reach and our know-how of the region. And as one example, I'm sure you know Moxtra. I think it's also from California, and we recently signed a group contract with them and use it for remote banking access for our premium customers, for instance. And this is a project I was following quite a lot, because it was, I think, in our first fintech partnership program a few years ago. And it took so much time until we were close to signing a contract, and now in second quarter it just happened because we needed it for our clients, right?
Yes.
So this is maybe one example where I think the crisis helped, so to say. Yeah. In innovation management, as I said, if something is very early and you still need to put the concept together, it's from my perception rather difficult. If you are a little bit more advanced, it's easier. This is how I would describe it. And this year, but we will learn a lot. I mean, this year and next 2 quarters, our fintech program is fully remote, really. So it's a learning curve, yeah, still, I would say. Yeah.
You know, a little bit, you mentioned Madrid and Spain. We are working with Caixa Bank with their Imagine project, which is mobile banking. And I also was very fortunate to meet Maximilian and Valentino of N26 5 years ago. And, as you know, they are growing quite fast for, mobile banking. How does the big banks compete with companies similar to N26 that are digital only? And what do you think will be the outcome or the challenge going forward?
Also, I think, as in any transformational phase for an industry, and I mean, if you look on economic history, this was in many phases over the last decades and centuries the case. They forced banking into transformation. I think there was a very early phase, and I followed this closely because before I took over the head of strategy function, I was responsible for innovation management in our group. And I could simply see it in senior management in any bank 10 years ago. I mean, this was simply not a topic, right? I mean, digital transformation was an IT roadmap or an IT task that needs to be delivered, but on the business side, there was not much buy-in. Then there was, for me, this hype phase, let's say in the last 3 to 5 years, when these challengers became very big, grew tremendously in number of customers in many different markets. I mean, there is not only N26, there are a few very prominent examples from the UK and other European countries. And this pushed, of course, the transformation agenda in most of the banks a lot, especially in the larger ones like us who are in many different markets active. Now, I think the time has come where these companies have, as a certain point in time, to show their P&L and their how sustainable the business model is. I mean, and I think, I mean, this is true for many digital business models, I would say, right? And this is the same in banking. Similar to automotive, if you compare market valuations, P&L, and growth assumptions, there is a gap. And I think the same is true for European banking. So they helped us a lot, especially people like me who were responsible for this kind of topics in the bank. They helped me a lot to get budgets and power to perform in the transformation, I would say. And now it's taken seriously a lot. And as usual, the challengers will now see how much additional value they can add compared to incumbents and what they delivered in the last 3 years, and how they can earn money. Because at the end, I think, and this is also for N26 a big issue, is how to monetize this customer base. So this is how I would describe it in 2020. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. You know, I think it is a very exciting proposition to onboard customers on mobile and grow, but now they have to try to make money from each one of those customers. And if there is not large or any fees, it's going to be hard to monetize it. You know, because they usually are their fees are either none or very little. So compared to the traditional banks. But if I may ask, like in your fintech portfolio or in your venture arm, what sort of technologies or startups are you looking for? What area of banking are you looking to invest in?
I would say in the last 3 to 5 years, it was a lot on, as everywhere in fintech, focus on payment. It was a lot on retail platforms and solutions around that. This is how I would describe it. Since last year, a lot SME became very important, small and medium enterprises, and value add service for these kind of customers. They were totally underserved and in most European markets. And this became more and more of an topic also for us. And now, slowly but surely, it also goes into the large corporate business, where you can see that this starts from ERP integration solutions over to trading platforms that large corporates can use. So I would say this is also how we developed with what we are looking at. To give you an example, I mean, in the beginning, I think the first elevator lab, as we call it, was purely about payments and enabling, and now we are, as I said, looking for ESG driven business model for large corporates. This one part, but what I'm proud of is, and this we managed also quite well, is we always had a focus on enabling technologies. We always said digital transformation is not about blinking apps and shiny online solutions, especially if you have this challenge with very old legacy systems and processes like any European Universal Bank has, you have to invest there. So maybe it is also counterintuitive, but the first fintech solution we had live was a very unsexy know your customer solution, who managed to get customer data from, I don't know, 50 different company registers over the world, where via an API together here in Vienna. And the customer relationship manager had to put one button and he had all this data aggregated here in Vienna. So this is something that does not sound very fancy, but it was with regard to the customer experience they had with us, huge step. And so I would say it was retail, then SME, and now more and more large corporate on the one hand side, but we always focused also on enabling technologies. This was very important to us.
Yes, no, it is, we are now a little bit working with insurance companies during their digital transformation. And I would say the financial industry, the banking industry was actually ahead of the insurance companies, in acquiring customers, servicing customers, and still, I think there is a lot more areas for improvement. What about, investments, the portfolio managers? Do you feel, are we serving the clients well, especially the wealthy client, wealth management? Do you see some technologies that help the younger investor make their own decision rather than the advisory services?
Yeah, also, of course, as usual, when you see these kind of developments, if you look on the wallet size overall and you add up all robo-advisors in the German market, for instance, which is the biggest in Europe, then you see this is already a very small fraction when you look on assets under management, of course. This is one part. The other part is, of course, if you look on number of growth numbers for customers, especially in the segment of younger, affluent banking customers, it is important. And I think for incumbents, the challenge, and this is also how we try to solve it, is that we provide much more transparency on the one hand side. I think this is maybe even more important, that the customer experience itself is for this generation is transparency and openness with regard to products, fees, developments, and so on. So this is one try how we try to tackle this. The other one is of course that is a very seamless and easy process. The third is ESG, of course. I mean, this is very different. This new generation of wealthy customers look almost only for ESG products, and also economic, social, and also from governance perspective, differently set up products. And here we are, luckily, this has a lot to do with our corporate DNA. We focused quite early on that and are market leader in ESG products. This helps us now. Yeah, so this is how I would describe wealth management currently. And this is even true for the large Swiss banks. I mean, Swiss banks, this for them, that's their primary business still, wealth management. But if I talk to Swiss colleagues being active in this business, it's still the same. Yeah.
Let me go back to the effect of this COVID-19. Again, some industries like travel industry and the hotel industry have been affected great deal. Do you, I mean, as a big bank, are you guys, what do you think about possibility of bad debt? And, are you sort of embracing for it or preparing for it? What is your crystal ball says about, the different industries that are going through challenge right now, like the airline industry and the hotel industry?
Yeah. I mean, it's even beyond airline. It's in general, it's everything about mobility and travel, which is affected, of course, because what we sometimes underestimate is also with regard to energy consumption, which is with regard to climate policy a very good thing, but you see it in the P&Ls of the energy sector, first of all, of course, simply because everybody stays in home office and you have much less energy consumption on that end as well. I mean, overall, I think all European banks I know increased their risk guidance. So they applied, as you would expect in such a crisis, especially for these industries that you just mentioned, their risk provisionings, as you call it. And we did as well. I mean, we are stock listed. You can very easily find the figures. What 21 will bring, of course, how will this crisis be shaped? I mean, this famous U versus V shape crisis discussion will depend on the industry. This is at least our expectation. So there will be a few industries that will come back quite fast next year. There will be other industries like the ones you mentioned where it will take rather 3 to 5 years. And there will be some cases where this change is sustainably, because simply people find out, like the discussion we just had, right, about our travel behavior. I mean, this impact is difficult to estimate, of course. So I would say in European banking, at least, there was a lot of blaming for an understandable reason about what European banks had caused in the last financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. I think maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think this time banks can be part of the solution. Simply because in Europe, the banks are now well prepared for a crisis because policies were very prudent since the last crisis. Also with this policy push of the European Commission, I think also here banks will play an important role to bring these investments into real projects. So my hope is, of course, coming from the industry, but my hope is that banks will this time be part of the solution and can help to turn this around.
That is everybody's dream right now. Like, how would this recovery will be? And as you may know, in US, we also have elections. We also have social unrest. So we are having a lot of different challenges, not only COVID-19. But it's been great talking to you, Hans. And I see Fernando joining us. So maybe we can have a few questions from the audience.
Sure.
Exactly. Thank you for this great discussion. It's been very insightful, I believe, and that's why we also have a few questions from the audience. The first being, first to Hannes, talking about a little bit of the call center and what's their role, in this digital transformation. So for decades that we've been hearing about chatbot, AI, etc., that will take over. But reality is that the vast majority of clients, when dealing with complex products, meaning loans, mortgages, in the wealth management space, even account opening, is still preferred to talk and not to type. So just interesting to hear your thoughts on it.
Fully agree. It's also our experience, and it's irrespective of the market, in whatever market in Europe we can see this. The most important button, if something in the process is stuck or you have a question that cannot be answered right away, is still the phone button. And it is very important that call centers, agents are well trained, can pick up and help you in solving this issue fast. And I mean, I would rather say, beside now chatbot, I mean, it's a separate discussion. What we learned is there is certain technology that can help the call center agent helping you faster. And this is maybe more important than substituting the call center agent by technology. So this is how I would answer it. And I fully agree. Same experience we are having, still a super important channel.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Another question then, it's also to Hannes, but then I'll reformulate and ask Said also the same similar question. The first being to Hannes is, what is the biggest digital transformation challenge currently at Raiffeisen?
It's actually around infrastructure. I think on the front end and also on the middle layer, we made huge progress in the last 5 years. We have a very successful API program running. We decoupled a lot of legacy IT very successfully from the front end and made it faster by that. But the big topic is still how to move faster into the cloud with certain functions, especially in banking. It's sometimes difficult because you have limitations here from regulatory side. It's also what Fernando mentioned, I think, in his introduction. And how to fully modularize the existing legacy infrastructure. This is for me, the non so sexy part of digital transformation is for me the most important one.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for the answer. And to you, Said, I think it's more on what is the biggest business challenge now for Plug and Pay, being a global company and being in different parts of the world. So what would be the biggest challenge for us?
You know, I'm not sure, Hans, have you ever visited our headquarter in Silicon Valley in the past? Have you visited us here?
I did not, no, not yet.
I would say, first, it's a pretty large building, about 16,000 square meter. And, people used to come here and visit, different technology companies and, plug and play technology center. And, this Silicon Valley, almost was the center of innovation, and it was a very big attraction. I think we had approximately 3,000 visitors per month.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the challenges is, how do you communicate with the different corporate clients? How do you communicate with the startups without having a central place? Because we sort of that central place, our headquarter, attracted a lot of visitors, a lot of startups, and now we have to create the same excitement on Zoom or on, with communication, and that is not easy. As Hans mentioned, especially in the beginning of a relationship, it's much easier to sit around the conference table and get to know each other. So I would say that is our biggest challenge. And that's why our satellite locations, I think, are doing better, because they are closer to our startups and closer to our corporate partners.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Said. And I think for the last question here, also to Hannes, has Raiffeisen Bank launched new retail products, meaning, as an example, new kinds of payment cards or similar, to meet new customer needs as part of the pandemic?
Also, the one example I would have on top of my mind is what I mentioned to Said. This was this launch of this remote advisory tool with Moxtra together for premium clients, for wealth management products primarily, where you can integrate the exchange of data and documents. Sounds ridiculously easy, but was in banking still a big step to make this possible. And we are happy that we launched this in the middle of the crisis. Overall, I think the card itself is a very persistent tool in all channels. We see credit card usage is as high as it ever was in e-commerce. Here in Eastern Europe, the situation is a little bit different to US and Western Europe because PayPal plays not such an important role. But overall, I think we try to improve our products regularly. There was no new launch of a product. The only thing that would additionally come up to my mind is SME platform that I also mentioned before, where we try to give small and medium-priced enterprises support in their financials to manage their receipts and payments and so on. And this, I think, the launch was also in the second quarter this year and even more successful because the need for digital and remote tools was increased.
Yes. Thank you so much, Hannes and Said, for this amazing conversation. Very insightful. We will be sharing this in our social media channels in the following weeks for those who could not be here and could not join at this time. And would like to take this opportunity once again to really thank you, Said, for waking up that early in California, and Hannes to with us here and talk to our CEO and founder.
Thank you so much, Hans. Great talking to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Said.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Take care.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.